Drawing Faces and Expressions. Learn to draw step by step. By Diane Cardaci. A pattern they follow to get from an initial sketch to a final drawing. You may find that a different process works for you, but I suggest first trying the process detailed below. It's a great method, especially for beginning artists. Faces and Expressions. In this era of digital cameras, why would an artist spend hours drawing the human face when it only takes a second to point and shoot? Think about a time you photographed a loved one but felt the photo didn't resemble the person at all. It isn't the camera that's to blame, it simply caught an expression uncharacteristic of the model. As artists, we use intuition and skill to create images that capture not only the likeness but also the depth of an individual's personality. In this book I'll share some of the skills that have helped me most. Remember, taking extra time to think about a subject's unique character provides the inspiration needed to create a true and expressive drawing. So let's pick up our pencils and get to work. Diane Cardaci. Contents. Tools and materials, drawing process, pencil techniques, shading techniques, facial proportions, expressions, shading the face, facial features, hair, accessories, all smiles, deep in thought, at ease, aging beauty. Tools and materials. The first step for any drawing project is to gather the necessary tools and materials. Deciding which tools to use depends on your subject and which materials you are most comfortable using. The tools and materials detailed here will help you get started. Pencils. Intricate or detailed drawings call for harder leads, or H pencils. Hard pencils are labeled 9H to H, with the highest number being the hardest. Soft pencils run from B to 9B, with 9B being the softest. Soft pencils create much darker lines and velvety tones. You can also choose graphite lead holders that come in different diameters, or woodless pencils, which have the advantage of a larger diameter lead. Pencil strokes. On the sample shown here, I used a 5H pencil, which has a hard lead. On the sample below, I used a 6B pencil, which has a much softer lead. You can see how the strokes of the 5H pencil are much sharper. Sharpeners. If you choose a traditional pencil, you will also need a sharpener. You can use a small, handheld sharpener or an electric sharpener. To sharpen lead in a lead holder, you will need a specialized sharpener called a pointer. Flat sketching pencils can be chiseled on a sandpaper pad. Erasers. My favorite eraser is the kneaded eraser, which can be molded to give you a lot of control over what you want to erase. There are also vinyl erasers and electric erasers. It is also very handy to have an erasing shield, which works like a stencil and protects other parts of the drawing. Blending tools. There are several tools that can be used to smudge and blend graphite. A blending stump is made of paper and has two pointed ends that can be used for blending. A tortillon is similar, but is hollow and has only one point. When you're working with a larger area, you can use a chamois cloth for blending. Paper. The quality of your paper directly influences the appearance of your artwork. Paper is often categorized by its tooth, or surface texture. The paper's tooth affects the smoothness of your drawing and the number of graphite layers you can apply before the paper rips. Below are the most common surface types. Hot-pressed paper has little to no tooth, resulting in smooth textures. Cold-pressed paper has more tooth than hot-pressed paper, its grainy surface yields more textured strokes. Rough paper features a coarse tooth that creates rough, broken strokes. I prefer working on Bristol paper, a thick paper that is available in a smooth or textured surface. Choose acid-free paper to eliminate future discoloration and deterioration. Tip. Tracing paper is an excellent tool. If you find yourself erasing too much and your paper is getting messy and confusing, simply take another piece of tracing paper and trace the lines that are most accurate. Drawing process. Every artist has his or her own drawing process, a pattern they follow to get from an initial sketch to a final drawing. You may find that a different process works for you, but I suggest first trying the process detailed below. It's a great method, especially for beginning artists. Begin with an initial sketch to help you find the right proportions and the proper facial feature placement. Add the shapes of the features only when you are sure the angles and proportions are correct. Tape a piece of heavyweight tracing paper on top of the sketch. Then use the guidelines to draw the shape of the face and add details. Transfer the drawing to a clean sheet of drawing paper, see transferring the drawing, shown here, and start developing your portrait. Tip: a drawing can be brought to many different levels of finished, as long as the level of refinement is consistent among all parts of the drawing. Transferring the drawing. I typically work out my composition sketch on a sheet of extra drawing paper and then transfer the final outline to a nicer piece of artboard to finish. Transferring the sketch is simple. Step 1. Use a 6B pencil to completely cover the back side of your sketch paper, the side opposite the image. For an even layer of coverage, you may wish to smear the graphite with a tissue or blending stump. Step 2. Turn the sketch right side up, and place it on top of the art board you've selected for your final drawing. Use artist tape to secure it, if you like. Lightly retrace the lines of your sketch with a sharp pencil. Step 3. Check the art board underneath occasionally to be sure you're not leaving permanent indentations. When you've retraced all the lines, your transfer is complete. Pencil. Set aside the finished drawing for a day or two and come back to it with fresh eyes. You may find things that need adjustment. Another way to review your drawing is to use a mirror to study the portrait from a different perspective. Once your drawing is complete, tape a piece of tracing paper over it to protect the drawing from smudges until you're ready to frame it. While the drawing process is simple, make sure to practice some basic techniques before beginning a portrait. On the next few pages, you will find tips for using a pencil, how to shade, learn about facial proportions and expressions, and how to render each facial feature. Draw some eyes, ears, noses, mouths, and hair separately before putting them together in a full portrait. Pencil techniques. Learning to draw requires a certain amount of control and precision, so get used to the feel of a pencil in your hand and the kinds of strokes you can achieve. Before you begin sketching, experiment with different pencil grips and strokes. The writing position. The writing position provides the most control in which to produce accurate, precise lines for rendering fine details and accents. The underhand position. Place your hand over the pencil and grasp it between the thumb and index finger. Allow your other fingers to rest alongside the pencil. This position is great for creating beautiful shading effects and long, sweeping lines. Pencil strokes. Learning to draw requires a certain amount of control and precision, so get used to the feel of a pencil in your hand and the kinds of strokes you can achieve. Before you begin sketching, experiment with different pencil grips to see how they affect the lines you produce. Fine detail work is more easily accomplished with a sharp pencil held as though you were writing, whereas shading is best done with the side of your pencil, holding it in an underhand position. Practice holding the pencil underhand, overhand, and in a writing position to see the different lines you can create. You can also vary your strokes by experimenting with the sharpness or dullness of your pencil points. A sharp point is good for keeping your drawings detailed and refined. The harder the lead, the longer your pencil point remains sharp and clean. A flat point or chisel point is helpful for creating a wider stroke, which can quickly fill larger areas. Create a flat or chisel point by rubbing the sides of a pencil on a sandpaper block or even on a separate sheet of paper. When drawing lines, it is not necessary to always use a sharp point. In fact, sometimes a blunt point may create a more desirable effect. When using larger lead diameters, the effect of a blunt point is even more evident. Play around with your pencils to familiarize yourself with the different types of lines they can create. Make every kind of stroke you can think of, using both a sharp point and a blunt point. Practice the strokes above and below to help you loosen up. Even if you use the same hand positions and strokes, the results will be different when you switch from a pencil with a sharp point to one with a blunt point. Take a look at these examples. The same shapes were drawn with both pencils, but the blunt pencil produced different images. You can create a blunt point by rubbing the tip of the pencil on a sandpaper block or on a rough piece of paper. Sharp point. Blunt point. Painting with pencil. When you use painterly strokes, your drawing will take on a new dimension. Think of your pencil as a brush and allow yourself to put more of your arm into the stroke. To create this effect, try using the underhand position, holding your pencil between your thumb and forefinger and using the side of the pencil. If you rotate the pencil in your hand every few strokes, you will not have to sharpen it as frequently. The larger the lead, the wider the stroke will be. The softer the lead, the more painterly an effect you will have. These examples were all made on smooth paper with a 6B pencil, but you can experiment with rough papers for more broken effects. Starting simply, first experiment with vertical, horizontal, and curved strokes. Keep the strokes close together and begin with heavy pressure. Then lighten the pressure with each stroke. Varying the pressure, randomly cover the area with tone, varying the pressure at different points. Continue to keep your strokes loose. Using smaller strokes, make small circles for the first example, at far left. For the second example, use short, alternating strokes of heavy and light pressure. Loosening up equals use long, vertical strokes, varying the pressure for each stroke, at far left. Then use somewhat looser movements, left top. Next use a wavy movement, varying the pressure, left bottom. More pencil strokes. Using crisscross strokes, if you like a good deal of fine detail in your work, you'll find that crosshatching allows you a lot of control. You can adjust the depth of your shading by changing the distance between your strokes. Sketching circular scribbles. If you work with round, loose strokes like these, you are probably very experimental with your art. These looping lines suggest a freeform style that is more concerned with evoking a mood than with capturing precise details. Drawing small dots. This technique is called stippling. Many small dots are used to create a larger picture. Make the points different sizes to create various depths and shading effects. Stippling takes a great deal of precision and practice. Simulating brushstrokes. You can create the illusion of brushstrokes by using short, sweeping lines. This captures the feeling of painting but allows you the same control you would get from crosshatching. These strokes are ideal for a more stylistic approach. Shading techniques. The key to transforming flat, simple shapes into convincing, lifelike forms is employing a variety of shading techniques. These contrasts in value, the relative lightness or darkness of a color or of black, are what give depth and form to your drawings. Creating depth. Separating the dark values of your shading from the light areas and highlights of your drawing helps produce a sense of depth and volume. When creating highlights, you can either save the white of the paper by leaving areas of the paper white, or you can retrieve highlights by pulling out the value, removing graphite from the paper using the edge of a kneaded eraser that has been formed to a point. Value tells us more about a form than its outline does, so use a variety of techniques to create a range of shades and highlights. Value scale. This value scale shows the gradation from black, the darkest value, through various shades of gray, ending with white, the lightest value. Easy ways to see values. Value is the lightness or darkness of the subject. When you look at a black and white photograph, you see only the values and not the hues, colors, of the subject. It can be confusing to discern values, but here are two simple tricks you can use to help. Squint. When you look at objects, squint your eyes and compare what you see to a value scale. Squinting cuts down the light entering your eyes, so the color is not so distracting. Black and white. If you're working from a photograph, make a black and white copy of it to help you see the values. If you are working from life, take a black and white photo of your subject and refer to it while you are working. Practicing basic techniques. By studying the basic shading techniques below, you can learn to render everything from a smooth complexion and straight hair to shadowed features and simple backgrounds. Whatever techniques you use, though, remember to shade evenly. Shading in a mechanical side-to-side direction, with each stroke ending below the last, can create unwanted bands of tone throughout the shaded area. Instead, try shading evenly, in a back-and-forth motion over the same area, varying the spot where the pencil point changes direction. Hatching. Hatching is a shading technique in which you make a series of parallel strokes placed closely together. Crosshatching. Crosshatching is a shading technique in which you make a series of crisscrossed hatching strokes. Gradating. To create graduated values, from dark to light, apply heavy pressure with the side of your pencil, gradually lightening the pressure as you stroke. Blending. To smooth out the transitions between strokes and create a dark, solid tone, gently rub the lines with a blending stump or tissue. Smudging. Smudging is an important technique for creating shading and gradients. Use a tortillon or chamois cloth to blend your strokes. Do not use your finger, because your hand, even if clean, has natural oils that can damage your art. Smudging on rough surfaces. Use a 6B pencil on vellum finish Bristol board. Make your strokes with the side of the pencil and blend. In this example, the effect is granular. Smudging on smooth surfaces. Use a 4B pencil on plate finish Bristol board. Stroke with the side of the pencil, and then blend your strokes with a blending stump. Basic shapes and lighting the form. The first step when drawing anything is to establish a flat line drawing of the object. Basic shapes can be further defined by showing how light hits the object to create highlights and shadows. Sphere. Most human forms are convex, so sphere shapes are helpful when learning to shade and draw. Cylinder. Cylinders help artists understand the neck form, as well as the jaw and forehead. Block. Visualizing the head as a block form reminds us that light strikes the front of the face differently than the side of the face. Wedge. The wedge form is very helpful when rendering the nose. Practice drawing a variety of forms under different lighting conditions and with light coming from different directions. I enjoy studying the egg in more detail, because I visualize the head as an egg, rather than a block shape. Below are 4 examples of light direction. Frontal lighting. The form flattens out, and the light does not detail individual features. This is why it's best to avoid drawing from photos shot with a flash. Side lighting. Half of the shape is in full light, and the other half is unlit, which means individual features aren't fully visible. This creates a dramatic effect but isn't conducive to portrait drawing, when likeness is key. 3/4 frontal lighting. Notice how the egg is best rendered using lighting coming from above, angled slightly to the right or left. This kind of lighting highlights features most accurately. Backlighting. When light comes from behind the form is completely in shadow, and there is often a rim of lighter value around its edges. Lighting the stage. Here I use strong outdoor sunlight, which created a harsher contrast between the shadowed and light sides of the pear. I also used more angular lines when outlining the pear and straight, angled strokes to shade it. For a more sensitive drawing, I used soft north lighting from a window, which resulted in a softer shadow edge on the form. I used no straight lines and shaded with strokes that follow or curve with the form. Designing values using thumbnails. Values aren't solely for creating form with shading, they also serve as the framework for the design of the picture. Even when you're only drawing the head, there can be many subtle differences between poses. To better plan a drawing, I use 3 small, thumbnail sketches to simplify the drawing by breaking it down into 3 or 4 values. The dark value of the man's vest and bow tie against the light value of his shirt play an important part in the design of the piece and help me choose the pose. Facial proportions. Despite the wide variety in human faces, there are some basic proportions that remain the same. Most beginners, for instance, don't realize the eyes are set halfway down the head. When sketching a person, first draw a circle to represent the large head mass. Then draw a line down through the nose to position the center line of the head. This line may be vertical or leaning to the left or right. Next, draw a line that represents the level of the eyebrows. It should cross the vertical center line. Place the ear, and draw a curved egg shape to represent the face. This is a 3/4 view of a face. Only one ear is visible. The frontal view is easiest to see. Try sketching yourself in a mirror to help better understand this ball and cross concept. The circle in this diagram helps you grasp how wide the head is when viewed from the side. Skewing. If you misjudge the angle of a tilted head, the features may become inconsistent. Be sure the eyebrows, eyes, nose, and mouth are all parallel when you establish your preliminary guidelines. The eyes are set halfway between the top of the head and the bottom of the chin. The center vertical line helps establish the various positions of the features. The bottom of the nose is halfway between the eyebrows and the chin. The bottom of the lip is halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin. From the side, the head is nearly as wide as it is high. The eye level is halfway down, and the ears sit behind the middle vertical line. The same proportions that exist in the previous diagram are illustrated in this side view. Note that the ear typically sits between the eyebrow and the bottom of the nose. Expressions. The diagrams below demonstrate how to convey emotions with only an outline. The eyes and mouth tell us a lot about a person's mood, of course, but the other facial features are also important. Note how the nose changes in a sneer, and how important the eyebrows are in conveying surprise and fear. Sadness. The eyebrows straighten, the eyes squeeze until they're nearly shut, and the mouth opens in a square shape. Laughter. I don't usually show laughter or a broad smile for a portrait, because the bigger the smile, the smaller the eyes. Rage and full-blown anger. The eyes enlarge and the teeth are bared. Fear. The jaw drops open and the eyes enlarge, revealing the white above each iris. The eyebrows draw together and become almost straight. Disgust. In a sneer, the wings of the nose raise, forming the nose into a point. The eyes often squeeze shut, and the center part of the upper lip raises. Surprise. The difference between surprise and fear is in the eyebrows, which arch rather than straighten as they do in fear mode. Sometimes the mouth drops open. Shading the face. When shading the face, keep your focus on the large planes, rather than the fine features. This makes it easier to understand how light falls on the head, which in turn describes the form. Pay attention to how changes in expression affects the shadows. The skull. This frontal view shows how the eye socket encircles and protects the eye, as well as how the cheekbones and jawbone protrude. The side view shows the depth of the skull, as well as how far back the ear canal is placed. Planes of the head. When drawing the head, keep your focus on the large planes, rather than the fine features. This makes it easier to understand how light falls on the head, which in turn describes the form. The drawings below show that in normal lighting the downward-facing planes are in shadow and the upward-facing planes are in the strongest light. The lighting pattern is reversed when someone is illuminated by candlelight, which makes the subject appear almost otherworldly. Facial features. It is a good idea to practice drawing eyes, ears, noses, and mouth separately before trying to draw a full portrait. When you think you're ready, carefully study your subject's facial proportions, and then give their portrait a shot. Don't become discouraged if you don't capture their likeness the first time. Keep practicing. Draw an outline of the eye. Note how the outside corner of the eye is higher than the inside corner. Long, horizontal strokes work great for light shading. Curve the strokes to follow forms. Use an HB pencil to lightly shade the iris with radial strokes, leaving a white highlight. Darken the pupil before adding light tone under the edge of the upper lid. Deepen the shading with a 2B pencil. Use 2H and HB pencils to lightly shade the eyeball and corner of the eye. Finally, add eyelashes with a sharp HB pencil. The ear appears widest in the side view. Use a few angled lines and curves to sketch the shape and position. When shading the ear, study the shapes within it, including an obvious Y shape. In this 3/4 view, the ear appears much narrower. Again, set the angles and proportions with a few lines. Study the forms carefully and make sure the values stay within the tonal range of the side of the head. Use an HB pencil to indicate the angle, top plane, and outer curves of the nose. Then add a layer of light tone to the shadow side and nostrils. Build tone on the side planes using crosshatching lines. Keep the plane on the right lighter than the shadowed left plane. Use curved strokes on the tip and the wings of the nose. Deepen the tone of the nostrils. Deepen the shading with a 2B pencil, and continue to build up tone. To finish, darken the shadow cast by the nose, and then use a 4B pencil to shade inside the nostrils. To realistically render the mouth, observe its shape and movements. For example, if you remember that the mouth wraps around the cylindrical jaw, you'll never mistakenly draw a straight line where the lips meet. The upper lip faces downward, so in normal light it's in shadow while the lower lip catches the light. In the illustrations below, you can see that visualizing oval shapes that give form to the lips will help you draw them accurately. Hair. Drawing hair can be challenging, but the task is much simpler if you think of hair in terms of masses, or large forms, rather than thousands of strands. The exercises below demonstrate how to study the forms of the hair and shade them appropriately. Drawing hair. Use the same process to render hair as you would with any other feature of a portrait. First block in the main forms, study the way the light hits them, and then slowly build up the forms with shadows. Use an HB pencil to outline the main forms. Study the forms and the way the light hits them. Use long, curved lines where there is shadow, following the direction of the hair. Add more shading to the darker areas, alternating between the point and the side of the pencil. Slowly build up the forms, leaving areas in light with very little tone. Hair values. When drawing with graphite, we must use values to indicate color. This is especially important when rendering the color of the hair. Both blonde and gray hair have very light values, so shading must be light and delicate. Use the point of the pencil to indicate thin shadows. Auburn, ash brown, and other mid-brown colors require a mid-value tone. Shading should be darker but not too deep. Dark brown and black hair both have dark values. When drawing dark hair, be sure to leave highlights to create a sense of form. Accessories. Clothing and accessories speak volumes about an individual's personality. When creating expressive drawings, don't disregard this important tool. Jewelry is a common accessory and reflects the individual's personal style and taste. Hats say so much about the wearer's personality. A scarf adds flair to a person's appearance, especially if it's tied or worn around the neck in an inventive way. The material or pattern also adds personality to a drawing. Some ties are quite formal, some are more casual. A man wearing a bow tie stands out in a crowd. All smiles. As a smile widens, the eyes become smaller. To avoid losing the charm of this girl's large, expressive eyes, I chose a photograph of her wearing a slight smile. Indicate the head's tilt and the centerline of the face. Then block in the shapes of the facial features. Add short, horizontal lines to position her nose and mouth and curved lines to suggest their widths. Tip: in the early stages of a drawing, start with extremely light lines. Proceed slowly and lightly as you build up the tone to avoid having to erase very dark lines. Child proportions. When a child is born, the proportion of the jaw to the head is much smaller. As a result, the halfway level of the head is much higher. As the child grows, the jawbone increases in size in relation to the head, and the halfway level begins to approach that of an adult. The halfway level of a toddler's head is close to the level of the eyebrows. In this drawing of an older child, the halfway level is slightly above the eyes. For an adult, it would be through the center of the eyes. Tape a piece of heavyweight tracing paper on top of the sketch. Outline the shapes and detail the hair and features. Mark the edges of the shadows on the face. Transfer the drawing to a clean sheet of drawing paper, and draw over the lines. With the side of an HB pencil, lightly apply long strokes that follow the direction of the hair. Use curved strokes to add shadows to the neck and face. Shade the iris with radial strokes and add tone to the eyes. Leave the eye highlight white. Add light shading to the whites of the eyes. Shade the face, neck, and features with strokes that follow the form. Use short strokes to tone the eyebrows. Tip: remember to think of hair in terms of large forms, rather than many individual strands. Outline the main forms and slowly build up the forms with shading, leaving areas in light with very little tone. Use the sharp point of an HB pencil to add more details around the eye, including the eyelashes, and deepen the eyebrows with short strokes. Use HB and 2B pencils to deepen the values of the hair. Deepen the shadow side of the face and the cast shadow on the neck. Keep in mind that the down planes should get more tone. Deep in thought. When drawing a portrait, try to go beyond likeness and capture something truly unique about the individual's personality. Your goal is to decide on an expression that best represents the sitter without replicating the candid quality of photographic snapshots. I chose to convey this teacher's admirable ability to think deeply. Including her hand helps set the pensive mood. First, create a rough sketch. Draw guidelines for the facial features and block in the arm, hand, and shirt. Keep the angle simple, and focus on the angles. Use small lines to indicate the widths of the mouth and nose. Check the proportions, measurements, and angles before placing the facial features. Break the hand shapes into smaller angle shapes. Then mark the shadow line and edge of the sleeve on the arm. Drawing hands. Hands are extremely complex, especially considering the many ways they can move and the different shapes that result. Practice drawing your own hands, other people's hands, and hands from magazines to familiarize yourself with them. If the hand is in complete shadow or complete sunlight, light and shadow can't help describe the form. Look for pleasing shadow patterns. Look for graceful positions that show the length of the fingers. It's difficult to make a drawing of a fist look realistic, as the fingers often appear cut off. Enveloping, or blocking, trains the eye to see large shapes first. In this drawing, I grouped the pinky and ring fingers as one shape, and the middle and index fingers and thumb as another. Recheck the proportions and angles before tracing the outline onto heavyweight tracing paper. Mark the hairline, detail the facial features, and re-any the rest of the portrait. Mark the shadow lines on the lower arm and face. Folds and wrinkles in the shirt should indicate the form underneath. Tip: when rendering the back of the hand, wrist, and lower arm, check and recheck proportions, as the transition from arm to hand is subtle. Transfer the drawing to a clean piece of drawing paper, and lightly go over the lines. Create long strokes in the hair with an HB pencil and begin to lightly shade the face. Use crosshatching to lightly shade the back of the hand and the shadows on the face and nose. Shade the upper and lower eyelids with light, curved strokes that follow the form. Then add tone to the irises and darken the pupils. Shade the down plane of the upper lip. Use long strokes to indicate shadows across the neck. Use an HB pencil to shade the hair. Build up the large shadows on the face with delicate crosshatching, curving the strokes around the nose and eyes. Darken the irises, and add short strokes for eyelashes. Add slight tone to the light areas of the face. Don't forget to leave a slightly lighter value to show resected light along the edge of the jaw. Fabric texture. Portraits often include some of the subject's clothing. What a person wears says a lot about his or her personality, so it's important to learn how to render different textures. By choosing the right pencil and paper, the texture practically creates itself. In the following samples, I used the same cold-pressed paper and technique but pencils with different grades of hardness. HB pencil. This pencil is hard, so it fills in most of the little valleys created by the tooth of the paper, making the fabric appear smooth. Use this pencil for cotton, polyester, or silk fabrics. 2B pencil. The 2B pencil is softer than the HB, so it reveals more of the paper's tooth, resulting in a subtle texture that resembles light knitwear. 6B pencil. This is an extremely soft pencil that best picks up the texture of the paper. It's a great choice for sweaters. Use more crosshatching strokes on the back of the hand. Finish shading the angers, leaving the knuckles almost white in value. The shift in the edge of the shadow shape suggests the wrist bone. Use a 2B pencil to create the texture of the sweater. Add subtle detail with the point of the pencil. Tip: don't go overboard on the sweater details. You don't want it to become the focus of the drawing. At ease. This young man has a pleasant, easygoing disposition. After exploring different lighting situations, I choose to forego harsh direct lighting in favor of indirect natural lighting, which helps create a complementary atmosphere. Start with an elongated oval for the head. Then add the neck and shoulders, guidelines, and facial features. Double-check the angle of the head before you add the neck and shoulders. Use heavyweight tracing paper to outline the face, using the sketch as a guide. Draw broken lines for hair, and then detail each of the facial features, as well as the ears. Study the curve of the back of the neck before adding the collar and shirt details. Pay close attention to the thickness of the lips. Thin versus full lips. This illustration shows thin lips and full lips with the same width. Note the thickness of your subject's lips when drawing them. Because lips vary in thickness from person to person, they are a defining characteristic of the face. Pencil tip versus side. I used a 3B pencil for both sets of strokes, but I used the side of the pencil in the lower example and the point of the pencil in the top example. The side of the pencil creates a much wider stroke, which is helpful for shading or covering more surface area quickly. Transfer the drawing to your drawing paper and darken the lines. Use the point and side of an HB pencil to shade the hair and eyebrows. Then add shading to the facial features. Don't shade areas where light hits the face. Build up the hair with short, irregular strokes. Lightly shade the whites of the eyes with a 2H pencil. Shade the shirt, using strokes that follow the form of the fabric, and fade out the shading as it moves away from the collar and buttons. Deepen the value of the hair using the side and point of a 2B pencil. Build up the tone on the neck with long strokes. Aging beauty. The trick to capturing beauty that deepens with age is to focus on the large forms of the face, rather than the details of the wrinkles. Using soft, indirect lighting instead of a strong direct light source is a great help. Start with basic shapes and lines to indicate placement and angles. Stroke in the hair in the direction of growth. Keep in mind that the jawline is not as smooth as that of a young person. And as you draw the neck, pay attention to the shadows created by aging. Tape a piece of heavy tracing paper over the sketch and outline the face, hair, and shirt. Re-ene the ears and facial features, using broken lines to shape the eyebrows, the folds under the eyes, and the deep creases around the face. Effects of aging. It is the large forms, not the details, of an aging face that are most important. In this sketch, you can see the major effects of aging on this woman's face. Don't get caught up in all the little details. If you focus on drawing these major effects, it isn't necessary to draw many wrinkles. A. Hair thins and recedes. B. The underlying skull becomes more evident, particularly around the temples. C. Lips become thinner, and the outline of the lips is less defined. D. Ager creases deepen. E. Earlobes are often elongated. F. Skin sags around the jawline. G. Neck loses its youthful form. Follow the form when shading the neck. Use an HB pencil to add long, light strokes in the hair. Transfer the drawing to a clean piece of paper. Lightly shade the side planes of the face and nose. Add shading to the facial features, using short strokes for the lips and eyebrows. Add subtle shadows in the light hair. Then darken the eyebrows, irises and pupils, and lips. Build up another layer of shading on the forms of the face, ears, and neck. Then delicately shade around the eyes, add more tone to the side planes of the nose, and deepen the shadow below it. Follow the direction of the fabric's texture when shading the shirt. Tip: its value, not color. That indicates the color of your subject's hair. Use dark value for dark brown or black hair, medium value for medium brown hair, and light value for blonde or gray hair. The gray hair in this portrait has a very light value, so keep your shading light and delicate. Use the side of a 2B pencil to deepen the value of the shirt. Avoid adding excessive detail in the ears. You don't want to draw attention from the face. Continue to build up tone in the face and neck and very lightly model the light areas of the face, such as the cheeks and forehead.